What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And today, we're going to be making a discussion video about what is the overall, worst set of characters that have released in Treasure Cruise. Now, I'm not really particularly talking about the power level of the unit on release. While that is a factor, I'm more just talking about how management of the game handled the release of the character. Whether it be, for certain reasons the character was not right on release, or just the other surrounding factors around the release schedule of this character really did not give this character any help when they first debuted. We'll kind of discuss this more as we go along here, but again, power level of the units isn't one of the main contributing factors. I'm more just thinking about how management handled the release of that said character in the game. So I have one honorable mention first, so we're going to jump straight into it. My first honorable mention is mainly just going to be this guy, is Arlong. Now, I guess Arlong in a vacuum, he isn't a great character, but when you pair it with the fact that he debuted alongside Shanks' crew for the French version 5th anniversary, I mean, they kind of screwed this guy on release. When it's funny, I actually had to look back, doing a bit of research for this video, grabbing some assets and stuff. Shanks' crew was literally the main poster child of this entire social campaign in the game. If you have a look, a lot of the the advertising material for the French anniversary, Arlong basically isn't present. It's essentially all on Shanks' crew, and it just feels so bad for Arlong, man. He got shafted so bad. I don't know what they were thinking. Just imagine if you had Arlong that had the power level of Shanks' crew, but obviously just did different things. That would be so crazy. Unfortunately, they basically made it where Arlong is just a trash tier character that no one ever uses, and you had Shanks' crew, which on release was the best character in the game. So I feel like Arlong really got shafted in terms of being a really bad Sugofest exclusive release. If you pulled this guy on release, it was like getting a consolation prize, whereas the main prize obviously was the Redhead Pirates. So yeah, it feels really bad for a character such as this. Now, the next character I think you can see here, man, this is a bit of a weird choice, but honestly, Strongworld Ace on release for Global was really, really bad. They kind of took him a little bit out of his usual schedule for Global. They actually debuted him alongside Int version 1 Mihawk, which is not where he was supposed to be, and the rare recruits that were supposed to debut with this guy actually ended up debuting almost 7 months down the line. The thing is that Ace, he came out in the 9th of February. I have it written down. The 9th of February is when he dropped, and this guy obviously is fully focused on the shooter class. Now, the issue is that the shooters that were available during this time period were not very good. Let's just say that. The shooters were really, really bad. And we really didn't get good shooter characters to support the Strongwood Ace team until September of that year, which is 7 months later. And also, if we have a look here, this is a team example for clearing a training forest. The Strongworld Straw Hats and Clash Zephyr, those two in particular, those two batches of units, were very powerful. They came out 7 months later. Clash Heracles came out in May of the year of release of Ace, which was approximately 3 months after Ace's release. So still, even on the release of Ace, you still had to wait at least 3 months to get a character that was considered meta for the Ace team. So it was just a really weird situation for him. He basically was useless on release until about 7 months after he came out on Global, when we got the Strongworld units, we got the Strongworld Sugofest, we got all the movie stuff with Clash Zephyr. Then we actually got Ace to his max potential. And by that time, it was almost time for another character to take his place as the quote-unquote best character in the game. So it just really feels kind of shafted for Ace, considering he should have been much more powerful for an extended period of time, but they offset that by releasing characters in such a weird schedule. Early days of Treasure Cruise was really weird, the discrepancies between the Japanese version and the English version, and this was one of those main reasons why Ace was just a really bad release in this game's history. The next character that I'm going to talk about here in terms of bad Legend releases was Legend Carrot. Now, everyone wanted this character on Global when she first dropped, after seeing what she was capable of doing on the Japanese version of the game. An incredibly powerful unit for speed farming content, which was way more important back in the day, as well as bypassing defensive effects, which we had seen before with version 1 Blackbeard, but doing it on the scale of what Carrot is doing, getting through content so quickly, was unheard of. Everyone wanted this unit to speed farm content. And not only did she release basically right after the massive Sugo Fest of V2 Katakuri and the guaranteed Snake Man legend, but they also, on top of all of that, made her one of the lowest rated debut Sugo Fest exclusive characters that we had ever seen in the game's history. This is the exact screenshot that you can see here from when I did pulls on this Sugo Fest when she first released on the 27th of June 2019. And you can see here that it is a 0.075% chance to pull. This is the 5-star version. You could not pull 6-star legends back when this character first came out. So this was the flat out definitive rate of pulling this character on any given poster. Of course, if you've got like a guaranteed red poster, this is a slightly higher chance. But just generically, on any given poster, having this low rate is unheard of. I think typically characters these days, when they debut, are like at least 0.1 or something like that, or even higher. I can't even remember off the top of my head. It's been a long time since I've seen the rates. But when this character debuted, no one saw rates this low for a debut legend. It was absurd. So yeah, shout out to Carrot for being one of the most hyped up releases in a long time, and having this on top of the fact that during Carrot's Sugo Fest release, they actually had an in-person event at some convention where they had like the producer was there and stuff like that. So having all of that happen during this IRL event with main people working on the game at an event was a bit of an awkward situation. Now, the next character that had a really bad legend release, in my opinion, is not only just Luffy and Sanji, but also Germa 66 and also the Sweet 3 Commanders. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is that during this release, this was actually Global's anniversary. At this point in time, the Global, the Korean, and the Japanese versions were not synced up yet. So, you know, we basically had the official anniversary in late February, and this was essentially one of Global's biggest celebrations throughout the entire year. And the awkward situation about Luffy and Sanji, as well as Germa and the Sweet 3 Commanders, is that a couple months prior, literally like during the New Year's celebration right before hitting February of that year, they actually released this guy, Goldie Roger. And of course, when he debuted, he was by far and away the best legend in the game, and pretty much was the best legend in the game for like the next one and a half years, maybe. So the fact that they did that was kind of crazy, because if you pulled Roger, there was essentially no reason to have Luffy and Sanji, Germa 66, Sweet 3 Commanders. Now, of course, those characters have some interesting other abilities. Of course, Germa have some unique abilities going on there. Sweet 3 Commanders have a very useful support effect as well. So I'm not saying they're completely useless, but they really devalued this major celebratory event for the global players because Roger existed, right? And not only that, okay, remember, this was Global's anniversary Sugo Fest. 1 week before this Sugo Fest with Luffy and Sanji, they reran the Roger and Odin banner. Like, can you believe it? They just literally said, hey, don't even pull on this Luffy Sanji banner. Just spend all your gems here on this 6th anniversary countdown Super Sugo Fest. It was crazy, right? Because remember, this was the first Super Sugo Fest characters in the game. So, like, Super Sugos weren't really, like, a big thing in the game yet. The only way you could pull these guys was on other Super Sugo Fests, and to my knowledge, the Luffy and Sanji Sugo Fest that debuted was not a Super Sugo Fest. I don't believe these characters were actually pullable. So it's like, what are they doing here, right? Like, they've got Odin, they've got Roger. There's pretty much no reason to summon for Luffy and Sanji when, you know, you've got Roger and Odin sitting here, right? So if you didn't pull them during the New Year celebration, you could pull them here during Global's anniversary and pretty much just skip over Luffy and Sanji. You can just completely forget about these guys. So the next character that I think had a really bad legend release was the Luffy and Yamato character. Now, one of the big reasons why I say this is because this character was the official headliner character for the 9th anniversary of One Piece Treasure Cruise. Now, typically, the anniversary characters have very high ceilings, extremely powerful characters that typically don't get power crept that often. Like, it will take quite a long time for these characters to get power crept. However, Luffy and Yamato were designed in such a way where using them was almost like a chore. This character was really, really annoying to use. The big thing here is that in order to get the most out of them, to use their special ability, you need to be already in their combined form. To do that, you needed to access their switch ability, which required 8 switches, which was quite excessive, honestly. But then they had such weird abilities in their solo captain effect where Luffy says if you defeat an enemy, you actually reduce the switch gauge by 1, which makes sense. But then there's also the effect where if Yamato is the captain instead, if you take damage, you reduce the switch gauge by 1. So the problem is you can find yourself in such a weird situation where you accidentally kill an enemy and then it actually will put your super switch gauge off, where sometimes you wanted to super switch into Luffy to get the strength typing, but because of certain switch gauges being reduced, you could actually just screw it up, and it ended up having to be Yamato as your super switch character, throwing off your typings, just screwing everything up. And I think, well, really, the fact that this was a thing, they've never really gone back into this kind of design space for characters where they have the 2 solo captains with different switchability reduction requirements because of how poorly this character was received. Now, another thing that kind of goes on top of why this character had a poor release is that prior to this, with the version 13.0 update in the month of April, prior to the May anniversary, they teased that there was a new mechanic coming to the game, Rush Sugo Special. Now, unfortunately, Luffy and Yamato also did not have this new mechanic. Of course, right after that, they introduced Ifrit, Jambe, Sanji, who actually did have the Rush Sugo special mechanic. And then, of course, after this guy, they had Enma Zoro, who also was a really cool character. So it just felt like the initial wave of the 9th anniversary was such a letdown. Not only the fact that you had Luffy and Yamato, which was designed so poorly, and their Blitz battle that released for Luffy and Yamato to this day is the worst Blitz battle that has ever come out, due to the fact you needed to charge their super switch gauge every single run, and they didn't give you that at the start of the quest, which made it even worse. But then also, like, Toki and Oden, in my opinion, not a very high tier character that debuted as like a subsidiary consolation prize in this banner as well. Part 1 of the 9th anniversary was just such a massive L. And then, of course, we had Sanji and Queen, both of which are great characters. And then we had Alba and Zoro, another batch of really good characters. So part 2 and 3 definitely held up this celebration, because part 1 was just such a massive L. Really poor design choices across the board here. Really hope they don't go down this road anymore. And then finally, the final batch of characters that I'm going to say is the worst legend release in Treasure Cruise history were these characters right here. The Memories of series. The Memories of Straw Hat Pirates. I mean, obviously, this image here is looking at Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, but this goes far beyond that. I'm literally talking all of these characters. Now, while if you look at each of these characters in a vacuum, there are positives to each of these characters in some way. However, this is with the knowledge and coming off of the fact that we just had the 10th anniversary Sugo Fest, which was arguably releasing some of the best characters the game has ever seen. The character quality in that celebration was insane. But then they come right off of that and they give us like 2 to 3 months of these garbage, low-level tier characters. We were padded out for like 2 solid months at least of these Straw Hat characters filling up every single event. These characters were not that great. They had really bad design philosophy around their actual structure here. Like, you know, you needed to have 2 of the listed characters in order to use their abilities. Their super tandems or final taps also were either terrible or had awful conditions. Like, one that comes to mind is like Frankie, for example. Like, Frankie, he does have a super tandem ability, but you needed 3 of the listed characters in order to get it to activate, and it's only a 2 times bonus. Like, they just made these characters purposefully bad, and I don't really understand why they made them so bad. Like, they could have done so much better for these units. And mentioning their design philosophy, where if you activated their special multiple times in the same turn, you would get beneficial effects, but they didn't even have abilities to guarantee them to get their special back. All of them had the ability to give themselves minus 10 turns. When they don't even have a 10 turn cooldown, you needed to rely on other characters reducing their cooldowns to get their special back again. It just really didn't make sense. So I really hope they don't go down this route anymore, or if they do, then they design the characters better. Because I will say, I mean, thematically and visually, these characters look really good, but actually using them in practice, it just feels really, really bad. And as I said, not all of them are like really bad. There are some positive aspects to these units, but like overall, they could be a lot better. And it's just the fact that coming off that 10th anniversary, we wanted to see something big, especially when you look back at some of the older anniversaries that the Japanese side has had. And going into their after party celebrations, they had some really cool stuff, right? Like they had like Luffy and Law as one of their big anniversaries, and then they had Sabo Koala debut right after that. During the Super Type, event, they had a character such as like Legend Kid and Legend Hawkins debuting for the first time, which was exciting because these characters never had legends. And then for like the final tap batch of characters, they had Sabo Ace, and then a brand new Versus unit, and it had been a long time since a Versus unit was brought into the game. And then like for the Super Tandems, you had right after that big anniversary event, like Super Tandem Law and Super Tandem Kid debuting. Like, they had some really cool stuff. And then we were expecting something similar along the same lines of having like a really cool event right after the 10th Annie, and they just didn't hit the mark. And then of course you had the disappointment of 6+ Luffy, which we all know what he was all about. So yeah, I do think that this was a very, very disappointing time in Treasure Cruise last year, and we're hoping that they don't go down this route ever again for these memories of Straw Hat characters. But with all that being said, that is pretty much it. So hopefully you enjoyed the video today. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about this one down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed it, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.